Aries looks out of her window of her apartment as her mom asks her if she packed all she needs, but she forgot to take her passport. She is leaving for a 5-day camp on a planet called Mipa the next day. At Muzinish spaceport, Aries walks happily and mistakenly hits an old woman with her bag. The woman tells her that she also went camping on planet Mipa and it was fun. Just as they were talking, a boy on a bike passes by them and steals Aries' bag. Then a boy, Canada, purses him using an anti-gravity shoe and knocks him out. Canada returns the bag to Aries and she thanks him. The patrol bots arrives at the scene and arrest Canada for assault. The students going to the camp gather together and wait for the other crew to come. Aries arrives and a man briefs them on their journey. He tells them that they are all students from Carrot High School Class 2B and were selected randomly. They wait for the last member of the team who happens to be Canada. Canada volunteers to be the captain of the team, but there are some members of the team that doesn't agree. Aries tells them all that she recently joined the school and she's looking for new friends. They all get seated and the spaceship takes off. When they get to planet Mipa, the pilot drops them off and leaves, saying he'll be back in 5 days. Then a mysterious sphere appears behind the students. The sphere starts to enlarge and they all attempt to run away but get swallowed up by it. They all appear in space over a frozen planet. They use their thrusters to move towards a spaceship that they saw. When they get inside the spaceship, they discover that Aries is missing. Canada volunteers to go back outside to help Aries, but when they return back to the spaceship, they go off course and move to a wrong direction. But the other students hold themselves and form a human ladder to help them into the ship. Zach reveals to the students that they are 50-12 light years away from their home. They decide to fly the ship home, but Zach adds that it would take them at least 3 months to get back to their home planet, and that they only have food and water that would last 3 days of the travel. When everyone sees the journey as hopeless and almost gives up, Canada tells the crew the story of how he and some students went on a mountain climbing trip and how only 5 of them were there after their teacher died in an accident. He says that the 5 of them survived for 7 days in the wilderness before help arrived. They all tell each other their names. Zach then uses the computer in the spaceship to look for planets that they can stop and restock their food and water on. He finds 5 planets that can habit them and they decide to go ahead with. Then they all agree to make Canada the captain. As they prepare to leave for the first planet, Vilavres, they name the ship Astra. They get to their first destination planet and the first thing they see is a flying winged beast. They then separate into groups to look for food and water. As they go on search for food, they find different types of plants like trampoline trees and parachute plants. As they move on, they see the mysterious sphere again and they run away, but the sphere disappears. It is here that Aries reveals that she has a photographic memory. When they get back to the spaceship, Quinnery gets annoyed and starts to get on everyone's toes. She even abuses Phoenicia, saying that she isn't even her real sister as she was adopted. Quittery then runs away and the crew goes out to look for her. Then Zach reveals to the group that he and Quittery were close friends when they were still children. He tells them that Phoenicia's mother died and Phoenicia was put in the orphanage home and Quittery's mother was her friend, so she adopted Phoenicia. He also adds that Quittery wasn't loved by her parents. They then notice that Phoenicia is missing, but they find her on a trampoline tree. The trees immediately grew taller, making it hard for her to come down. Quittery runs out of where she was hiding in order to help Phoenicia. The winged beast then starts to hover around her. Just then, the students see Canada running and jumping off a cliff to a trampoline tree as there are many trees in the area. He jumps onto the second tree and then a winged beast tries to attack Phoenicia. Canada then finds a javelin spear and throws it at the winged beast and it dies. He then jumps on the tree that Phoenicia was, but when he lands, he loses a lot of strength and falls of the tree. But Quittery released the parachute tree just in time to catch Canada as he fell. Quittery apologizes to the students and Canada reveals to the rest of the team that his dad trained him to become an athlete. Canada then says he isn't fit to be the captain of the team due to some of his irrational behaviors and actions, and that Charles should be in charge. But Charles declines, saying he can only be second in command to Canada, and the whole team agrees. They were able to leave planet Vilavres after staying 2 days on it, and they took food and water to last them for the next round of the journey. After they finish eating, Zach tells Canada secretly that the communicator of the spaceship has been destroyed by someone, and he believes that the person is one of the 9 of them on board. Canada was surprised to realize that there is an enemy among them. Zach tries to figure out who the enemy among them is, but it ends up useless, as they all look innocent and suspicious at the same time. On his way, Canada finds Ulber coming out of the storage area with a briefcase. Canada then asks him if he found anything that will be beneficial to the team, but he replies that anything he finds, he will use it to keep only himself alive. The team arrives at the second planet called Schumer. While the students were discussing, Phoenicia reveals to the team that the headmaster of the orphanage was talking to a man in sunglasses. She said that the man in sunglasses told the headmaster to put her, Phoenicia, in B5 and that he will illuminate them all. Canada then realizes that the man actually said put her in B5 and eliminate them all. They then discover that they were all meant to be killed for the same reason. As they try to think of what they could have done to warrant their deaths, Canada reveals to the whole team that there is an enemy among them and that the enemy destroyed the communications system of the spaceship. As they discuss on how the enemy plans to survive after eliminating the other students, the water system of the spaceship gets broken and air starts to leak out. Zach points out that the gravity generator might have gone down, resulting in them floating. Charles then tells them that they were hit by meteoroid. They all work together and try to solve the problem. Charles tells the team that the spaceship is getting pulled by Schumer's gravity. Zach tells them that they will crash on Schumer in the next 9 minutes, and there isn't enough time to fix the generator. But Ares tells them that there is a backup generator in the food storage area. They decide to connect a cable from the backup generator to the gravity controller. As they all move out to solve the problems, Yoon-hwa gets hit by a floating mass of water, and she starts to drown, but Quittery helps her. They connect all the cables and send power, but a safety mechanism kicks in because of a small alien bird flying in the spaceship. Oliver shoots the alien bird with a glue gun, and they were able to land the ship safely and also solve all the problems. After that, Oliver leaves the rest of the team and opens the briefcase that he took from the storage room and finds a gun. The crew discuss the enemy among them and come to a conclusion that the enemy is also doing his or her best to survive too. Canada then tells the team members to quit trying to find the enemy. When they land on planet Schumer, they look for food, and they find a very delicious plant that they call candy plants. On the other hand, the other group finds water inside cactus plants. They then find out that there is a lot of vegetation around a particular species of plant that are tall and look like mushrooms. They then find the carcass of dead animals in the vegetation. Then a space animal appears behind them and starts to chew Quittery's hair, but the animals called Groupus are friendly and even offer to give them a ride back to their spaceship. They find out that the candy plants get spoiled unnaturally fast and that the other edible food can only last them 5 days as the Groupus are inedible. Canada then tells the rest of the students that they have to remain on the planet until they get all the food they need. The next day, Yoon-hwa drops a note telling the other students to leave her on the planet. Canada runs ahead of the other students to look for her. He finds her and tries to talk her into coming back. She tells him she has no special talent and her mother raised her by telling her that if she can't do anything right, she shouldn't do it at all. Back at the spaceship, the tall mushroom plant releases their spores, which turn out to be poisonous spores, and all the students fall as they inhale it. Charles manages to contact Canada and tells him to come rescue them with his helmet on, and they take them back to the ship. They discover that the antidote is the mushroom Canada, and Yoon-hwa fed it to Groupie when Groupie was collapsing as well, and it recovered after eating it. Canada goes straight away to find some of it. When he gets there, he figures out he must inhale and have the symptoms to get the location of the mushroom. He inhales the poisonous spore and collapses, but eventually sees the mushroom. He cures himself and takes back to cure the rest of the students. Day 26 of being lost in space, the students speak about the beautiful song Yoon-hwa sang, and they discover she's the daughter of famous musician Lucy Lum. They finally leave Schumer with heavy hearts of missing the Groupus. Back on Earth, the news is now viral that the students are reportedly lost on planet Migpa for a month, and the lost students' parents try to file for a judicial declaration of disappearance. Mrs. Spring still has hope they are alive because nothing makes sense to her about how their ship was found in an ocean of planet Migpa, but no traces of the students. They believe the government can no longer help them in searching for these students, and Luca's father, who is a senator, cannot talk to the government again after too many trials. The press questioned Luca's father about how he feels knowing his son is missing in space during the DNA sampling, and he says it feels as if his body is being torn apart. Now on planet Arispade, an oceanic planet, the students lay by the beach enjoying the best life they see as adventure. Later on, the girls discover Ares is in love with Canada and Quittery is in love with Zach, and they encourage them to go talk it out with the boys. Ares tries to ask Canada Risky if he has a girlfriend, but Canada childishly talks nonsense, and Ares goes back as she told him not to worry about it anymore. Luca and Albert secludedly go to fish, and there they share thoughts where Albert shares that he doesn't get well with his father and he doesn't like friends. Albert reveals his true self and points a gun at Luca's head, and the other students see that Albert is the enemy. Still in the dreadful scene, Canada bravely tries to convince Albert to remove the gun, but he refuses and shares his story with them. He talks about his brother whom everyone loves, and he's a freelance journalist unlike him. People refuse Albert. Oliver and his brother love each other, but Luca's father, being involved in some criminal act, kills Oliver's brother after he got himself messed with the case. Oliver painfully shares his plight and is about to kill Luca when Luca reveals that she is actually an intersex, both male and female gender, and her father doesn't like her for that. Oliver drops the gun after hearing Luca's story, and a big wave hits them right there. Ulver gave up holding Luca's hand as the wave pulls him off, but Canada comes to the rescue. They resolve back to the ship after the wave ends, and the students share the thought that the main killer of Ulver's brother might not be Luca's father, since all the politicians are always getting prosecuted for corruption. The students are even getting to know each other better due to the incidences that are happening until Ares makes it clear to the team that she has a photographic memory, and she's sure that Charles hasn't been in biology class after Charles says he has been, and the scene ends in a new threat of who really Charles is. Charles begins with telling the other students about himself, that he's actually a transfer student and he is from a noble family in Vixia royal quarters. He reminisces on how his close friend Sarah, who is a commoner, sneaked into the nobles area with him where commoners are restricted and the guards find them. The guard grabbed Sarah, but she tried to let go until she accidentally fell off into the river and she became unconscious. The students cry after hearing Char's story, but Char's rather laughs at them because having put everything behind him, he finds the mourning moment funny. They arrive at a new planet, planet number 4 with heavy hearts. It is planet Icarus. They fly by a group of big space birds that get electrocuted as they get in contact with overflown mushrooms. They dodge these electrifying mushrooms, but suddenly get pulled by a toothplay that grows fast from the ground and hooks the ship. Zack strategically manages to get them out of the situation, but their spaceship is damaged and they crash land beside a river. Zack discovers the ship damaged partly and won't be able to fly them to space and concludes that they are stuck in the planet Icarus, too bad for Quittery, and she breaks down crying bitterly. They start to search for food even though they are devastated and depressed. They spot a very old creepy spaceship and they go near it. Captain Canada, Zack, and Ulver enter the ship to find it out. They enter the ship and discover its electrical units are still active. They, however, find a machine containing a human and they wake it. Canada lets out the woman in the hibernation pod and they take her back to their spaceship. Her name is Paulina and she explains her crew was on a planetary investigation when their ship crash landed in a similar way and she entered the pod so as to survive. Paulina tells them about her ship called Arc 4 and what got damaged when they crash landed, and luckily for them, the damaged part of their ship is still functioning in Arc 4, so they set out to transplant the systems. Paulina is still resting inside a room in the student's ship when she asks Yunhua what year they are. Yunhu tells Wee and she figures she had been sleeping for 12 years. She gets more heartbroken. Zack and Quittery leave to search for food, and there they sit together and discuss about their childhood until Quittery explains her deepest feelings for Zack, and Zack returns the energy and promises to marry each other right there. They go to the location where Paulina crew might be and some big bamboo shoots erupt and attack them. They run back to the ship, but Canada, the brave man of the hour, manages to get back the ID tag Paulina initially spots as a remain of her crew. After 11 days, they finally set out to continue their journey to another planet. Zack helps Canada fix his gravity shoes from the scraps he collects from Arc 4. Quittery looks into the analysis of blood transfer samples when they were donating blood for Paulina and see her blood samples is the same as Phoenicia. Zack decides to carefully experiment it and he discovers their blood samples are actually the same, which means Quittery and Phoenicia are the same person. Canada, alone in his room, remembers his father motivates him to achieve his goals. Zack, on the other hand, tells the team that the DNA results are a complete match and it shocks them. Canada suggests that maybe Quittery and Phoenicia are clones, or maybe all of them are even clones. Somewhere in Muzanish, Earth, the parents discuss about the whole clone theory, that all the students are clones and they make them in order to become them and live the lives they once had at youthful ages back, but eventually send them to meet an untraceable end in space, because they don't want such a secret science to be revealed to the public. Back in space, the students figure out the whole theory themselves and feel really sad and they cry. Canada gives the team hope of holding one another as a family since they all have the same properties. They were raised unloved and knowing they are all clones doesn't bother most of the boys. Zack and Quittery finally announce to the team about getting married and the team goes crazy. The team keeps going crazy about Zack and Quittery's marriage thing until Zack finds out that the telescope's showing Earth to be our next stop. Paulina comes out of her resting room to the scene and discovers Earth is the next planet and she couldn't believe she's finally going home. Paulina crazily speaks about Earth not being Earth and the discovery of planet Astra as their last location. They are still yet to unravel the mystery of which planet is their actual destination when Paulina starts to ask them about the world they are coming from, and they start by telling her about World War III in 1962. Paulina gets shocked about 1962 as the year of the Cuba Missile Crisis, and Ares clarifies that Cuba is the country worth the base that got attacked and that triggers into war. Paulina mentions God to her amazement, and the students wonder what God is because they haven't heard about God or religion before, and they ask Paulina to tell them what happened after that in her history. Ares goes first. In October 27, 1962, the USA and USSR entered into war, nuclear weapons were used, sending the world into an all-out nuclear war. The war lasted for 2 months and half of the world population were lost. Humanity regretted its foolish actions and vowed to rebuild a peaceful world. Now the students ask Polina to tell them about what happened in her world as well. They want to know if the Third World War happened in her world. She tells that her world is far from peaceful, but no global war happens. But a far greater threat emerges on that overwrite all other petty human conflicts. 2049 was the year an asteroid was discovered on a collision course with her Earth, and that led to planetary immigration. Earthlings tried to migrate to a new planet with artificial wormhole, and Canada quickly relates that to the sphere that swapped them in the beginning. Polina and her crew used Arc 6 to find out a new planet until they met their fates, and the students ask what happens about the Exodus. Polina tells them the Exodus mostly was a success and expatriates, that they are all formed Earthlings who moved to Astra. They figure out that they have been traveling from Earth to Astra all along. Something still doesn't add up to Zach. The current year is 2063 and the Exodus happened in 2057. Zach says that is 6 years. In fact, nothing makes sense to him. Ares finally lessens the confusion by concluding that when they get to Astra, they can see for themselves and learn about what they don't know. They get to planet Gallum and they continue to search for food when Ares tells Canada what their lives would be when they get to Astra. Canada wanders away from Ares and thinks about the enemy he believes is in the group and thinks the enemy might also value the bond they've created between one another when the sphere suddenly appears again out of nowhere and starts to chase him. He runs to Ares yelling, but Ares looks aliens and sees nothing as chasing Canada. The sphere already disappears. They go back to the ship. Canada secretly tells Zach and Charles about the sphere, and they begin to suspect Algar as the enemy and set out plans to entrap him. As Funacia goes missing, they have to abort the mission. Just as Charles was about leaving, Oliver points the gun at him and the sphere comes out. Canada rushes to the scene and restrains Charles and collects the device that controls the sphere. Turns out Charles is the real enemy and the plan is all about taking Charles down. Charles is exposed as the real enemy and he explains that he knows he was a clone all along and he is the actual clone of the Vixia King. The scene ends in an ugly moment of devastating emotions for the team. Charles confesses to the team his real story in the castle, how he was sired to the king with his whole existence, and when he aged 7 and the Genome Control Act passed, the king decided to kill him. It appears the story Charles initially told the team was improvised. Charles explains that he stopped his attempts because he did not want to harm Ares, who he reveals to be Sarah's clone, and that Sarah was No's daughter, the princess of Vixia. He reveals his true past, where Sarah helped raise him but was opposed to cloning project, and Ares was born without her knowledge. Unwilling to subject Ares to a doomed fate, Sarah secretly had Ares' surrogate mother smuggle her out of Vixia to live a normal life. Sarah, however, is later pushed off a cliff and killed by an assassin. With Sarah's death, Charles felt his mission was his only purpose in life. Back to the scene, Charles is still standing before the team confessing about the true story and claiming to take Ares back to the Vixia King and make her Princess Sarah when Canada angrily throws him a fine punch. The team still believes Charles can change when he removes another sphere controller from his right hand and brings back the sphere in between him and the team. Suddenly, Charles starts to bring the sphere to himself. He wants to end his life because he actually cares about them. The man of the hour rushes to Charles with his grabby shoes and pushes him off, but the sphere really closes them up and it starts to swallow them. The sphere already has Canada's hand in it, but Charles manages to turn it off, leading to amputation of Canada's hand, and the scene ends in utmost sadness for the team. Charles apologizes to them bitterly and thanks them for the love they show him. Canada, however, still feels the pain and they help him. Charles begins to explain the whole secret of Astra to the team and they listen carefully. He tells that Earth was going into extinction by an asteroid and humans chose to relocate to a new planet. Astra was found as the planet similar to Earth, and it remained a secret part of history only known by the high-ranked government officials and the Vixia King. But then the wormhole, created as a link between the two planets, made everything worse. War immediately broke out as different nations attempted to fight over land on Astra, and the wormholes were misused as weapons. A single world government was finally formed to bring about peace, but not after half the population was killed. Charles continues the explanation, mentioning the migration have actually taken place 100 years ago, but the students only know the incidents to have taken place just 6 years ago. So that leads to confusion, and that is when Yun Hu decides to diagrammatically illustrate and summarize it. She says the humans in 2063 went to another planet and rolled back the history by 100 years, connecting Earth's history with a new story. All of that happened just because they wanted peace to reign. They finally understand the history and want to expose it when they get to Astra for everyone to learn the truth, but the responsibility is huge and could get them killed. They figure out someone in Lieutenant Grace who can help them publicize the truth, as the government is hiding it and don't want it revealed. Ares writes the history as a letter ready to be sent to her mother, who will in turn send it to Lieutenant Grace. Lieutenant Grace goes to the royal quarters after getting the letter from space and arrests the Vix King and the murderer of Sarah, Mark Vix. The starship reaches near planet Astra, but faces Astra planetary government. Astra planetary government communicates with them and welcomes them home, and also tells them their originals are in custody. The students rejoice and reminisce on each and every difficult time they had, and as they are about to finally land, the press and the people are already gathered waiting for them. Ares spots her mother and her heart overflows with joy. She barely can believe this is happening, and so do all of them. Afterwards, the whole world questions the students and they reveal the historical truth. The world begins to crumble as expected, but what stops it is Canada's book, The Adventure of the Spaceship Astra, which becomes the world's best-selling book. Charles eventually becomes the Vix King, and he sets things right. They all graduate from Caird High and move in their own paths. 7 years later, things have changed. Algar investigates the death of his brother from his father in prison and finds out that his brother's killer is exactly who he thought. Ares and Canada are getting married, and the girls congratulate Ares as they prepare to enter Wormhole musical concert. Canada gets a prosthetic arm and sets to embark on a new adventure in space with Zach when Charles, the king of Vix, joins them. Wormhole sings melodiously in the concert, and everyone's heart melts. Such a daring adventure for the clone kids, and the story ends happily ever after. The end. If you enjoy this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more amazing recaps.